Car Talks, power, precision, performance. Welcome to part 1 of the road to 6,000 subscribers. And to celebrate this milestone, I planned a 5-day road trip and Mazda said, say less. We're gonna send you a car. And here we are, road tripping in style with the newly revised CX-60 Individual. So huge shout out to Mazda Southern Africa for lending us the car. Now, if you recall, this is the exact same car which I drove in the launch video in Northwest, but this time around, we're taking it on a proper adventure. I'm attending a wedding, so the first leg of the trip will be to Midlands in KwaZulu-Natal for the white portion of the wedding, and then that'll be followed by a traditional ceremony in the Eastern Cape. And finally then, we're gonna drive back to Johannesburg. But then, along the way, I'll be dropping a full review of the CX-60 into the footage where I'll be discussing its practicality, its features, its performance, cost of ownership, and all the little details that matter on a long trip. So without wasting any more time, welcome to the ultimate road trip. Now, when the vehicle arrived at home, it had just over 500 kilometers on the clock, and 400 of those kilometers were incurred during the Northwest media launch of the vehicle. So technically, that means we're the first ones to have this particular unit on test. And we'll be breaking the engine in, so we had to make this trip super special. First things first, the Individual is powered by a 2.5-litre naturally aspirated engine producing 141 kilowatts and 261 Newton meters of torque. Power is sent to all 4 wheels via an 8-speed automatic gearbox, and it'll accelerate from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in a claimed 9.9 seconds. It weighs 2,342 kilograms, and unfortunately, Mazda only quotes the gross vehicle mass, which includes 5 occupants with their luggage. But if we reverse engineer that process and assume that all 5 passengers weigh 75 kilograms each, with their 5 cabin suitcases weighing approximately 10 kilograms each, then that would mean that the actual weight of the vehicle is about 1.9 tons without any passengers or their luggage. Now that the technical stuff is out of the way, we are officially on the road to Midlands KZN, so let's go. The N3 freeway between Johannesburg and Durban has 4 toll gates in total, and unfortunately the vehicle didn't come with an E-tag from Mazda, so we paid and paid and paid and paid. Not that we were complaining though, because the N3 is so serene if you don't mind the trucks. So I really enjoyed the drive. Now, in terms of how the vehicle feels to drive dynamically, the CX-60's all-wheel drive system is essentially rear bias, so power is only ever sent to the front wheels when the vehicle needs the extra grip. The steering wheel is also incredibly sharp and direct, and so all of these characteristics culminate to a very sporty drive, and I think that's where Mazda may have a competitive advantage over the Chinese. Now, I haven't said anything about the engine yet, but we're gonna talk about it a bit later, and extensively so. Moving on to practicality and features, the boot capacity is 477 liters up to the tonneau cover, but if you fill it up past the tonneau cover, then you get up to 570 liters. The rear bench folds completely flat in a 40-20-40 split configuration, which then increases capacity to 1,148 liters. Under the boot cover, you will get a Bose subwoofer because the Individual comes with the Bose sound system as standard. You also get a biscuit spare wheel and a 12-volt socket for when you go camping. Our first stop of the journey was at an engine one-stop just before we got to Harrismith for a quick leg stretch and some coffee. And then we were on our way yet again. Yeah, I think at this point I can say with absolute certainty that the coffee at this one stop is better than the one in Bloemfontein. Sorry, what? Is everybody else seeing what I'm seeing? Okay, sharp, let's go. Say what you will, man, but to me, this looks like Table Mountain, and I'm pretty sure the views from up there are absolutely breathtaking. And from the side, it almost looks like Lion's Head. But let me know in the comments if you agree with me or not. And as for the trip, it started getting dark before we reached Midlands, so we knew that all the shops would be closed by the time we arrived. So then we decided to grab dinner at Monroe's instead. Mondlos, if umzulu. Look at all the bugs. And FYI, I didn't film anything beyond this point, so yeah, let's see each other tomorrow. So it is officially the morning of day 2 and we are in Midlands, which is about 450 kilometers southeast of Johannesburg. And by the looks of things, we are already a quarter of a tank away from empty. So we're going to be driving to Pietermaritzburg for my wife's makeup appointment before the wedding and to refuel, of course, because we're on less than 100 kilometers of range left. Which means that a full tank of petrol will probably not get you to Durban from Johannesburg, despite the vehicle having a 58-litre tank, which was full when we left Johannesburg. Nevertheless, beautiful weather outside, so let's sit back and enjoy.
Many moons ago, I had a lot of broken glasses, saw a lot of laughing faces, my body, head and soul. Many miles away, I could start a perfect story. I found myself and find no glory. This deceptive world, giving me the sign, giving me the sign. Giving me the sign, giving me the sign. Even if I cry, even if I die, don't you come right, set them on mine. Even if I cry, even if I die, I'm just a woman, I'm just a nomad.
Now, Now, one thing about the N3 is the excessive number of trucks on the road, and they drive so recklessly. It's no wonder why most trucking accidents in South Africa happen in KZN. So I'm still of the opinion that we really need to go back to having a reliable railway system, because this is not it. Touchdown Pietermaritzburg, and we are officially refueling for the first time since we left Johannesburg. Ay, mara this engine, but we'll talk about it in more detail a bit later. Anyway, our full tank of petrol gave us 630 kilometers of range, which is really hard to believe for this vehicle, but we'll see how far it can stretch. And once our PMB to-do list was done, we went back to our accommodation in Midlands to get dressed for the wedding. Speaking of the accommodation, this is what it looked like. You got a TV room, 2 dining rooms, and a formal lounge. It also came with 4 bedrooms, but unfortunately, my family had already occupied all of the bedrooms, so I couldn't show you inside. Nevertheless, we quickly had breakfast, and then it was time to attend the wedding, which was on a beautiful farm estate, and that gave me a chance to admire the CX-60 from outside. Oh, look at her, there she goes, in the magnificent machine grey exterior paint color. Speaking of the CX-60, in the rear you get a center armrest with 2 cup holders, ISOFIX anchor points for your child's seat, and 2 air vents with 2 USB-C ports. In relation to the rear air vents, Chips asked, if it's only dual zone climate control, then does the rear passenger get the temperature of the driver or the passenger side? Great question, Chips. Let's all find out together right now. Evidently, the answer is the temperature in the rear is a mixture of the 2 in front, almost like your shower mixer when you leave the settings in the middle. As always, I'm 1.78 meters tall, and I can just about fit behind my driving position. Headroom is also fine as well. The next day, we checked out and made our way to the Eastern Cape via Pietermaritzburg and Kokstad. And one thing I've observed is that KZN is really beautiful, guys. The landscape is just breathtaking. You just see fields and fields of umoba. Another thing I've observed is that KZN drivers don't care about barrier lines or any other rules of the road for that matter. But we're gonna keep it safe and only overtake when permitted to do so. We have officially made it to the N2 to Kokstad, and it's pretty exciting because it's a national route, because we've been doing 60 to 80 kilometers per hour since we left Pietermaritzburg this morning a few hours ago. So yeah, we're gonna get a chance to cook a little bit, but obviously keeping within the speed limit. While we're going to the Eastern Cape, let's talk about some of the features that you get in front. For starters, the front seats are 8-way electrically adjustable. You also get a massive panoramic sunroof with tilt and slide function. When it comes to storage, it's plentiful because you get a cubby hole and a large storage bin under the armrest, which also has 2 USB-C ports. You also get head-up display as standard, which is a nice touch, especially for long road trips because you don't have to look down constantly at the speedometer. Now let's talk about some of the buttons that you can expect to find up front in this vehicle. This is your hill descent control button, which is useful when you're off-roading. Next would be your 360-degree camera button, which is really useful, especially if you're parking in tight spaces. Your parking brake is of course electric, and auto hold basically holds the brakes if you stop on an incline so that the car doesn't roll back when you lift off the brake pedal to accelerate. But you have to switch it on every time you start the vehicle, because once you switch the vehicle off, it'll revert to its default settings. This would be your volume knob, which you can also use to skip to the next track. The home button takes you to Mazda's main menu with all of the different options. The music button pulls up the audio source menu, which gives you a variety of options from which to choose, including radio, Bluetooth, Apple CarPlay, and Android Auto. This is the navigation button, which takes you to Mazda's native sat-nav system. The swivel wheel basically controls the infotainment system because it's not touchscreen. And for those of you who keep saying you can make it touchscreen by connecting Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, well, here's evidence that you cannot do that, at least not in the South African market anyway. Now back to the road trip, and we have finally made it to the villages of the Eastern Cape in Transkei. And as always, the landscape is absolutely serene. So when I'm in the Eastern Cape, I hardly ever book accommodation because it's home and I've got relatives the entire province over. So this trip was no exception as well. As a matter of fact, we slept at a relative's place in Mthatha. Shout out Mount Aleph. Now, if you know anyone from Mount Aleph or you're from Mount Aleph yourself, then leave a shout out in the comment section. So after spending a night in Mthatha, we had to refuel because the car was completely empty. Now, if you recall, the last time we refueled was in Pietermaritzburg. This engine, we're still gonna talk about it. Anyway, this full tank gave us 480 liters of range, and I wasn't even cooking that much. But yeah, let's continue with our journey, guys. Hayi kuhle kwaXhosa kodwa ingaske nihlale nimane nigoduka. We passed through Equnu on the N2, and that right there would be the late Nelson Mandela's homestead. We finally made it to Midlands Transkei for the traditional wedding, and we put the vehicle into off-road mode. Initially, I thought this would raise the ride height. However, upon further research, I realized that it actually slows down the throttle response for better control over rocky surfaces, and the torque is distributed to where it's needed the most to enhance traction. To activate off-road mode, you simply toggle through using the My Drive selector button, which gives you three options, namely Sport, Normal, and Off-Road mode. Once this was activated, the CX-60 crept through the off-road terrain with relative ease. So when it comes to soft-core off-roading, the CX-60 is perfectly fine. I do want to add a disclaimer, however, that this is not a ladder-on-frame SUV. So if you're looking for some hardcore off-roading, then this might not be the car for you. Now, once the traditional wedding had been concluded, we then made our way to my hometown, Eqonce, passing through the Khai cuttings. And if you know anything about the kite cuttings, then you'll know that they're not for kids. You really have to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you'll find yourself at the bottom of the valley. The time is now 5:30 in the morning and we are driving back to Johannesburg from eQonce, a stretch that is just under 950 kilometers in total, which was quite daunting, especially considering all of the driving that we had been doing over the preceding 4 days. Nevertheless, giving up was not an option. We persevered because that's what we do on this channel. We make lemonade out of lemons. So when we left eQonce, we still had just under half a tank remaining from the fuel that we poured in Mthatha. So let's see how far it will actually take us on this particular trip. I've spoken about this road before on one of my numerous 3 series road trips because it's such a technical road, especially with regards to a vehicle's cornering ability. And I have to say that I'm quite impressed with this vehicle dynamically because it corners quite flat and there's minimal body roll. It almost doesn't feel like an SUV at all. So beautiful, beautiful handling out in this terrain. And you require minimal steering input to make the car change direction. So definitely sharper steering than the vehicle it replaces. Here I was testing the engine's overtaking prowess, and yeah, those 261 Newton meters are definitely not enough to carry such a big car around. I was found yearning for more torque, but we'll talk about the engine a bit later. Moving on to 3 things I really like about this vehicle, and this time around I'm deliberately choosing to start with the things that I like, because once I start to talk about the 3 things I don't like, then it might be gruesome. So here we go. At number 1 is of course the interior build quality. All of the components feel built for purpose and built to last. And the bonus is that there's no piano black in here. You still get some scratchy plastics in the lower parts of the doors, but generally the cabin is of quality. Number 2, the CX-60 comes with a 5-year unlimited kilometer service plan and warranty, which is a significant indicator that Mazda really believe in the durability of their product, and they're basically sticking their neck out for their brand. In fact, upon further research, all of Mazda's vehicles come with a 5-year unlimited kilometer warranty and a 5-year unlimited kilometer service plan, except for the Mazda 2 and the Mazda CX-3, which only get a 3-year unlimited kilometer service plan. But the 5-year unlimited kilometer warranty is across the board. So yeah, that is quite substantial. Number 3, I like that the climate control still has physical buttons. In a world where manufacturers are burying every function in the infotainment system, having physical buttons is honestly refreshing. Moving on to 3 things I really dislike about the car. At number 1 are those fake tailpipes mounted to the bumper. As you can see, the actual tailpipes are under the bumper facing downward. But to be fair, the Germans have been doing this for quite a while as well, except for BMW of course. But yeah, this trend needs to come to an end. And number 2, the lane keep assistance is really invasive, to the point of overriding your own steering inputs at times. You can turn it off in the settings, but as soon as you switch off the vehicle, it just reverts to default settings, which means you need to remember to switch it off every single time you drive the car. At number 3, and last but not least, the elephant in the room is that engine. With only 261 Newton meters of torque, lugging around a near 2-ton car is no joke. It is significantly underpowered. The other issue about a small naturally aspirated engine is that in order to have any sense of forward momentum from pull away, you need to get the engine above 4,000 RPM at a minimum, which then means that it's not a very efficient engine. So it's almost like a double whammy, but just take a look at this. So as you've just witnessed, we hit 4,000 revs quite a few times as we were pulling away, but there's just no sense of urgency. And that was just to keep up with traffic, by the way. So what I'm trying to say is you're not really gonna get anywhere in a hurry, but you are gonna burn through a lot of petrol while you're at it. I mean, we were averaging 9.4 liters per 100 kilometers on this road trip in mostly highway driving, which is the same as the Wildtrak V6 diesel that we had on test earlier on. And that car weighs 400 kilograms more than this. Now, in the Australian market, Mazda have given them a 3.3 litre inline 6-cylinder engine in both diesel and petrol variants. Similarly, in the UK, they have given them a similar 2.5 litre petrol engine as ours, but that one is paired with a plug-in hybrid system and only consumes 1.4 litres to the 100 and is more powerful than our engine. Apart from reliability considerations, I don't know of any other benefit to having this kind of engine in such a big and heavy car. But let me know in the comments, guys. Perhaps there's something that I'm missing. And just a parting comment on this engine debacle. The Chinese are here, and they're not here to play. So if a manufacturer wants to continue to thrive in this era, then give to South Africans the engines that South Africans want. I love misty weather, by the way, FYI. I think I already said that in Midlands, but yeah, I could drive in this kind of weather for hours and hours. And for anyone wondering, we are now entering Queenstown, aka Komani. This is called Penhoek Pass, by the way, and another piece of South African road I thoroughly enjoyed driving on. Sometimes snows in winter up in these mountains, and the local authorities will intermittently close Penhoek Pass. And once they do that, then driving to Johannesburg normally takes 13 or 14 hours instead of the 10 because you have to go through various detours to get there. I'm gonna enter a clip to demonstrate what it looks like around about now. So we stopped in Jamestown to refuel, but since there's nothing happening there, we then stopped again in Elwell North for a quick leg stretch and some coffee. For those of you who know that once you cross the Orange River, you're basically in Free State. So hello Free State, my old friend. Nice to pass by here once again. We are now about 200 kilometers away from Bloemfontein, so now would be a really good time to talk about the architecture of this vehicle. Looks are subjective when it comes to the design of a motor vehicle, so I'll leave it up to you to decide how you feel about the looks of the CX-60. For me, the side profile looks like that of the CX-5, but the key differentiator is, of course, the elongated bonnet on the CX-60. I believe that this was done because the engine is mounted vertically or in an inline fashion as opposed to transversely or horizontally. This setup therefore needs more space up front, especially for the inline 6-cylinder variants. Other highlight features of this vehicle include Mazda's driver personalization system, which remembers your seating position, mirrors, climate, and audio settings, and then automatically restores them when you get behind the wheel. Once you enter your name and height, the vehicle stores your ideal driving position and uses facial recognition technology to instantly recognize that it's you who's driving. You can also store up to 6 different profiles. This works wonders, by the way, especially for couples who share a car, because you can simply climb on board and not have to worry about fiddling with the mirror settings and your seating position. It also does this with Apple CarPlay, by the way, so your CarPlay will be automatically linked to your profile, and every time you jump into the car in the driver's seat, your Apple CarPlay will be automatically recognized as part of that profile. Now, before we get to pricing, cost of ownership, and how much we actually spent on this trip, if you're enjoying these videos, then do well to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. It really does go a long way in helping the channel's reach. Anyway, we are now passing through Bloemfontein, and as some of you may already be aware, I like to stop at the Engine 1 stop on the N1, despite their terrible coffee, because their customer service is excellent. But this time around, upon arrival, we noticed that the place was under renovation, so we quickly headed out to a nearby Shell Ultra City. Only to find that it was under renovation as well. Pumili tender renovation. So at this point, we just decided to stick around and have lunch instead before the final stretch to Johannesburg, because by the looks of things, every petrol station is being renovated on the N1 in Bloem. Okay, so let's have a conversation on pricing. Now, the lineup kicks off with the base model 2-wheel drive 2.5 litre naturally aspirated dynamic, which starts from 706,700 rands. This is on promotion, by the way, so in effect, this is a discounted price. A step above that is the all-wheel drive individual model, which is what we're currently driving today, and that starts from 888,700 rands. Above that is the top of the range 3.3 litre diesel Takumi edition, which starts from 1,085,100 rands. Using the individual model as our primary example, on finance, it'll set you back 16,781 rands a month over 6 years at the current prime interest rate of 10.5% per annum. Insurance is risk profile dependent, and the cheapest quote I got was 1,846 rands. Full tank of petrol will cost you 1,252 rands at the current inland price of 95 octane for this 58 litre tank, which would then bring your total cost of ownership to 19,879 rands. The top of the range Takumi costs 196,000 rands more than the individual, so let's call that 200,000 rands, which works out to an extra 3,900 rands a month. Now, in the launch video, I said that that was a lot of money, and that still holds true, but after having lived with the individual and driven it extensively, I'm saying to you, if you have the extra pennies, just upgrade to the Takumi and skip the individual. I'm such a fan of the engine in the Takumi because it's honestly a nuclear power plant, and I'd rather be driving that over the Mercedes-Benz GLC, Audi Q5 and BMW X3, because none of the Germans have 3-litre diesels anymore in the SUVs of that size. At least not for the South African market anyway, so that's a unique selling point for me. I remember we used to have a GLC 300D in the market. We also had an X330D, but gone are those days. So from that perspective, Mazda is in a really unique position in the market, and hopefully our next test car from them will be the Takumi. Otherwise, the individual is still a great package, don't get me wrong. Dynamically, it is superior. However, I just think that it has the wrong engine. If you've watched the video up until this point, then let me know in the comment section which 4 provinces did you see in the video. Moving on to how much we spent on this trip in fuel and on-road costs. So we poured 3 full tanks in total, one in Pietermaritzburg, one in Mthatha, and one in Jamestown, all of which came to a total of 3,071 rands. However, when you factor in the fact that the vehicle came with a full tank from Mazda SA, valued at 1,252 rands, then that would mean that total fuel consumed during the trip was 4,323 rands. Additionally, there were 4 toll gates on the N3 which totaled 298 rands. Lastly, we came across 3 additional toll gates on the N1 on the return trip which totaled 192 rands, which would then mean that total on-road costs were 4,813 rands for this trip. And once you factor in accommodation and meals, then you're comfortably over 10,000 rands. So these road trips are quite expensive, guys. And the reality is that you will never recover that money just from Google AdSense alone, unless you have sponsorships, of course. So I don't blame automotive reviewers who just get a press car, drive it around the city, and then produce a review. Anyway, we are now officially back in Gauteng province, and this is literally the last stretch to home. So see you in a short while. So we are now back home and the vehicle is sitting on 3,008 kilometers, which means that we've traveled a total of 2,472 kilometers, most of which was on highway driving. And as you can see, the average fuel consumption is sitting on 9.4 liters per 100 kilometers. So yeah, those are the stats for the trip, guys. But let me know in the comments how you feel about them. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.